Is this really the worst year in 20 years for real estate sales in the GTA? There's a lot of data that have just come out, kind of shocking people about how challenging the market is getting right now. What I'm going to do is break down the data for March of 2025. So this is a market update, and you can see what's really happening in terms of like what segments of the market are being hit the most, what segments of the market are not being hit, and then give you some ideas more specifically about different areas of the city and whether you should be concerned about those. My name is Marcy Verburg. I'm a realtor and a consultant here in Toronto. If you would like some more information, it's right below. Let's get into it. Let's break down the numbers as to why we've had the worst month in 20 years in the GTA for the real estate market. Now, everybody's saying it's the worst ever in a long time. We're going to get into whether that's really true, and I'm going to tell you where the problems actually lay. If you take a look at this chart here with the data, the first number here is talking about sales. So this is a number of homes that were actually sold, not the price. Everybody's talking about this 23% decrease in the number of sales. However, what I want you to really look at is these numbers here, the new listings and the active listings. So we had an increase in the number of new listings in March of 28%. Now we're always going to get new listings in March, but look at this versus last year. However, I want you to really look at this, active listings. We have had a whopping 88% increase in the number of listings on the market. That means all the listings from like March, February, January, anything that didn't sell through before that is all kind of piling onto the market. I'm going to break down where in Toronto this problem actually is so you can see it a bit more clearly. Also, you can see here that the time it takes to sell a home, now surprisingly here, is only up about 20%. So listing days on market, is increased by about 20% here. All right. So let's talk a little bit about what's happening with the prices. Now, I mostly talk about 416. The Toronto Real Estate Board is now made up of a number of different regions that are kind of falling into this 905, and then 416 is the city proper. So what you can see in terms of sales themselves is you can see everything dropping here. Now you can see they're not as bad as overall. So the 416 dropped about 10% versus 905 dropping almost 30% in detached home sales. Semi, look at this, 5 versus 22, although they don't have a lot in 905 as much as they do in the city. If you look down here at the condo apartments, a 21% drop in 416 and a 27% drop overall. So this is the drops in the number of sales that are actually selling through. In terms of your actual price here, you can see that, if you want to buy a detached home in Toronto, it's around $1.7 million, which actually has gone up just a little bit. 1.3 for a semi, which has also gone up a little bit. Now, your condo price, this is really surprising, only down just under 2%. We would have thought that those condo prices would be a lot lower. This is down from about 760 around this time last year. So we're still coming down. If you want to go out into the 905 area code, they are coming down a little bit more. I thought you might be interested just to see quickly what the prices were over the last, 10 years, 12 years. So we were around $500,000 for a home in GTA. Back here, we're up to about 1.117 last year. And as you can see this year coming in just a little bit lower than this. So keep in mind that your investment, it keeps going up if you're in the Toronto area, right? And it will stabilize here. And then we'll probably at some point, we don't know exactly what's going to happen, but I don't think it's going to go down too much. Now, in terms of active listings, I would like you to see the breakdown by region. So of all those listings we have, Toronto has 9,122. But we really need to think about neighborhoods, niches, types of homes. So if you're thinking, should I sell or buy a detached versus a condo, those are two different questions. The months of inventory was really interesting here is Toronto's up to 4.3 months of inventory. That means if all the homes that were available all sold, it would take 4.3 months to do that. Dufferin and Halton are, a lot lower at those three ranges. Now, this is a really striking chart because I said Toronto has got 4.3 months of inventory, but this is where the majority of the inventory is building in that central market, which is largely made up of condos. Toronto West and Toronto East are a little bit more kind of average in the amount of time it takes to sell a home. Now, if you look more specifically for City of Toronto active listings, you can see we have 2,000 detached, and we have about 5,600 condo apartments and 634 condo townhomes, meaning that almost 70% of the active inventory available in the Toronto market has got to do with condos. Now, why that is kind of interesting is that we've got this massive glut, and I've talked to this a little bit before. The glut in the condo market is coming from assignment sales that don't sell, people kind of buying pre-construction 6 years ago. So, say around 6 years ago, you could have bought a pre-construction condo for about $1,400 a square foot, and now resale condos are about $875 per square foot. That is a whopping difference. So if you've got a new condo on one side of the street and an older condo, which frankly is going to be a lot bigger on the other side of the street, you can pay significantly less for the older condo. And so what we're seeing is that the new condos are coming on the market. It's harder to sell them. People don't want to do the pre-construction. People who bought pre-construction are actually losing their deposit. They're not closing. They're selling for a lot less. And then our rental market is actually going way down in price right now. So if you did close your pre-construction condo, chances are you'll never get enough money in the rental market to pay for that. Plus, the city has wiped out Airbnb, taking some of that pressure. And keep in mind, of course, a lot of those kind of newer condos that are really teeny tiny, they were built for Airbnb, rental, investment. They weren't really built for long-term kind of buys like the older condos that were built in the 1970s, which are around 1,200 square feet. So, if you're thinking about a detached home, it's a very different market than if you're thinking about a condo home. I think it's a really great time to buy into condos if you find the right deal, and definitely not pre-construction right now unless you can find a really good deal in an assignment. However, if you were thinking about buying, like I've seen some great deals on bigger, larger kind of condos, it might be good for somebody downsizing into, or somebody who actually wants to live there for a long time, say 3 to 5 years or longer, and not kind of buy it as a rental. If you have any questions, please note below my number is there. You can reach out to me, and I would happy to be chat with you anytime.